When crude oil was discovered in commercial quantity in Oloibiri, present-day Bayelsa State in 1956, no one envisaged that it would result in one of the most brutal state-sponsored murders in Nigeria's history. The execution of television producer, playwrights, and environmentalist Ken Saro-Wiwa and 8 others by the regime of late military dictator General Sani Abacha in 1995. But what is the true story behind the assassination of the infamous Ogoni 9 and never-ending battle for Nigeria's crude oil? Please don't forget to click the like button, share, subscribe, and turn on the notification icon to get new video updates. The real struggle for the control of Nigeria's oil resources started when General Chukwuemeka Ojukwu declared the old eastern region as the Republic of Biafra on May 30, 1967, following a chain of events culminating in the anti-Igbo pogroms in northern Nigeria between 1966 to 1967. Ojukwu and his co-travelers were also motivated by the recent discovery of large quantities of crude oil deposits deep underneath the Biafran soil and the huge money-making potential the black gold could fetch. But just as the discovery of crude oil in the east fueled the Biafran fight for independence, it also reinforced the Nigerian government's determination to dismantle the Biafran uprising by any means necessary. All efforts to broker peace between Ojukwu, the new Biafran leader, and General Yakubu Gowon, the Nigerian military head of state, failed, with the most notable being the meeting in Aburi, Ghana, conveyed by Ghanaian leader Lieutenant General J.A Ankrah between 4 and 5 July 1967. But the decision reached during the meeting, famously known as the Aburi Accord, which among others provided for a confederal system, were not implemented, and the stage became set for what will ultimately go down as the most violent conflict in West African history. For 3 gruelling years, the Nigerian and Biafran armies will engage in a raging civil war and a battle for dominance in which an estimated 2 million civilians will lose their lives in the conflicts. The wartime narrative from the Nigerian military was that the Biafran state was nothing more than an insurgency sponsored by foreign countries to destabilize and disintegrate a promising African country. The Biafran narrative, on the other hand, was that the Nigerian state had adopted a policy of genocide against the Igbo people, and so independence was the only way to protect themselves from complete annihilation by the Nigerian state, whose only interest was in the exploitation of Biafran oil reserves. These wartime messages will have a long-standing impact on how Nigeria's oil wealth will come to be viewed in the years following the war. After 30 months of intense fighting, the civil war eventually ended on the 15th of January 1970 with victory for Nigeria and the declaration of no victor, no vanquished by the Gowon-led government. It is important to state that the breakaway Biafran Republic consists of other minority ethnic groups other than the Igbos. These ethnic groups, which make up an estimated 40% of the Biafran wartime population, are the true heirs of Nigeria's oil wells. Although many of these ethnic groups domiciled in Niger Delta axis remain relatively unknown both during and after the war, they would arguably be the worst affected victims of the never-ending struggle for Nigeria's oil. One of such minority group was the Ogonis, the ethnic group of over 2 million people, occupying a 1,050 square kilometer homeland in present-day Rivers State and boasting of one of the best crude oil deposits in the entire world. With large crude oil deposits scattered all over the Niger Delta region, successive Nigerian regimes granted licenses to multinational oil companies to operate and extract crude oil with little consideration for the economic and environmental well-being of host communities. One of such multinational authorized to explore and extract oil from Ogoniland was the Royal Dutch Shell Oil Company, now Shell plc. Shell has been active in Nigeria since 1937 and has the largest footprint of all the international oil and gas companies operating in the country. In fact, Shell spearheaded the first discovery of oil in commercial quantity in the Loibiri, present-day Bayelsa State, in 1956. Though the entry of Shell into Ogoni land brought financial gains to the federal government, it became nothing short of a living nightmare for the Ogoni people. This is because Shell's oil exploration resulted in massive environmental pollution of farmlands, air and waterways due to oil spillage and gas flaring. Worried by the serious damage being done to their land by Shell, some prominent Ogoni leaders in 1970 wrote a strongly worded letter to Shell's headquarters in Port Harcourt, raising concerns about the damage done to their land by the oil company. According to the letter, the Ogoni roadways had begun collapsing under the sheer weight of Shell machinery, and the fishing and farming industries, which had been part and parcel of the Ogoni way of life for centuries, were now under significant threat from oil spills in the farmlands and rivers. Expectedly, Shell in its response dismissed the allegations as nothing more than a dishonest attempt to blackmail them into paying money to the Ogoni leadership and forcing Shell into building local infrastructure. The concerns raised by the elders became more glaring when on the 19th of July 1970, an oil wellhead belonging to Shell exploded, hurling fire and hot oil into the Ogoni skies. And within 2 days, the spill had devastated farmlands and poisoned the air, rivers, and other major sources of drinking water in the area. The pollution also resulted in the death of aquatic life, preventing farmers and fishermen from their major source of livelihood. For 3 long weeks, the oil spill continued unabated, contaminating anything it came in contact with from the air, land, and most importantly, waterways. Unfortunately, the July 1970 oil spill would just be one among a long list of similarly devastating incidents that will occur over the next 3 decades. In fact, by the end of the 1990s, the total amount of crude oil spills in Ogoni land will reportedly reach as high as a combined total of 2.5 million barrels. Mosob and Saro-Wiwa struggle. Disturbed by the environmental pollution of Ogoni land and the hopeless situation of its people, renowned writer and film producer Ken Saro-Wiwa in 1990 decided to champion the Ogoni struggle. Saro-Wiwa was born on October 10, 1941 in Aburi, River State, and speaks the Kahana dialect of the Ogoni language. After a short but eventful career in government, Saro-Wiwa had reason to become arguably the most well-known Ogoni in all of Nigeria, thanks to the success of his hit comedy show, Bassi and Company. The television series, which ran for more than 50 episodes in the 1980s, with an estimated audience of 3 million Nigerians, centered around the life and trials of a small-time conman and his various get-rich-quick schemes, and popularity of the comedy show was largely due to his light-hearted criticism of the get-rich-quick mindset that had become prevalent at every level of Nigerian society. This series was, however, cancelled by the military in 1992. To give more impetus to the struggle, Saro-Wiwa, together with others, formed the Movement for the Survival of the Ogoni People, Mosob, a pressure group which advocated for the rights of the Ogoni people, particularly against the environmental degradation of the area by Shell Oil Company. He was initially Mosob's spokesperson and eventually became its president. To press home their demands, Saro-Wiwa, with the blessings and support of Ogoni elders, drafted the Ogoni Bill of Rights and presented it to the military government. The Bill of Rights set out Mosob's demands, including increased autonomy for the Ogoni people, a fair share of the proceeds of oil extraction, and the remediation of the environmental damage to Ogoni land as a result of the oil exploration by Shell. Expectedly, the Nigerian government simply brushed aside the demands contained in the Bill of Rights and allowed Shell to carry on with the environmental degradation of Ogoni land. The oil spill from Shell exploration continued unabated, contaminating anything it came in contact with, from the air, lands, and most importantly, the waterways. the total amount of crude oil spills on Ogoni land will reach as high as a combined total of 2.5 million barrels by the end of the 1990s, according to reports. Deciding that more drastic measures are needed, Saro-Wiwa organized a mass protest on the 3rd of January 1993, in which he mobilized an estimated 300,000 people, accounting for 1/3 of the entire Ogoni population, to come out in peaceful protest against Shell's exploitation and Nigeria's government's betrayal of Ogoni land.
We are going to demand our rights peacefully, non-violently, and we shall win.
The protest succeeded in attracting global attention to the plight of the Ogonis. In the same year, the Nigerian military government occupied the region. Despite the success of the January 3rd protest in attracting global attention, Shell continued to expand its operations in Ogoni land as it brought up more concessions, dug through farmlands, and devastated more communities with the full support of the Nigerian military government. Saro-Wiwa's Mossab quickly adopted the more radical approach by mobilizing Ogoni youth to vandalize Shell's infrastructure and harass their workers. And within a short period, Saro-Wiwa's Mossab had succeeded in forcing Shell to suspend its operations in Ogoni land in 1993, an action that would ultimately begin the chain of events leading to the brutal murder of Saro-Wiwa by the government. Angered by the loss in oil revenue accruing to the federal government as a result of the withdrawal of Shell from Ogoni land, the military government led by General Ibrahim Babangida quickly announced Decree Number 29, mandating a death penalty for anyone altering words, flying a flag, or publishing materials that were possible of causing violence or encouraging ethnic nationalism. According to multiple sources, the regime also deployed a special task force into Ogoni land to carry out covert operations aimed at manufacturing falsehood to implicate and summarily execute Mossab members. Between 1992 and June 1993, Saro-Wiwa was imprisoned on several different occasions for months without trial by the Nigerian government. When General Sani Abacha became military head of state in November 1993, he decided to continue from where his predecessor stopped by immediately deploying an additional 400 military officers into Ogoni land with direct instructions to attend Mossab's demonstrations and open fire on activists wherever possible. But despite the shoot-to-kill policy of the Abacha regime, Mossab continued its struggle and membership drive, attracting more determined Ogoni youths to their fold. But the increasing number of casualties suffered by Mossab members will, however, cause a crack in the ranks of Ogoni leadership, with some elders accusing Saro-Wiwa of being too militant and began calling for Mossab to seek to engage in peaceful negotiations with the Abacha regime. Abacha would go on to take full advantage of this division among the Ogoni elders to mastermind one of the biggest state conspiracies ever witnessed in Nigerian history. On May 21, 1994, 4 Ogoni chiefs, all of whom were opposed to Mossab's radical approach towards the Abacha regime, were seized during a pro-government meeting of elders and brutally murdered by a mob of angry youths. Saro-Wiwa, who had been denied entry to Ogoni land on the day of the murders, was arrested and accused of inciting the youths to carry out the killings. 8 other Mossab leaders, namely Saturday Dobe, Nodu Erwo, Daniel Boko, Paul Navarra, Felix Noate, Baribo Bera, Barianem Koibel, and John Quine were also indicted in the killings, believed to be orchestrated by the Abacha regime to silence Saro-Wiwa for good. Despite completely denying all charges, Saro-Wiwa was imprisoned for over a year before he was eventually brought to face trial in front of a special tribunal whose members were handicapped by General Sani Abacha himself. Sensing the biasness in the conduct of the tribunal, nearly all the defendants' lawyers resigned in protest and accused the Abacha regime of already having a predetermined outcome. Despite the global outcry and appeals for his release, Ken Saro-Wiwa was ultimately found guilty and sentenced to death alongside 8 other leading members of his movement. On November 10, 1995, Saro-Wiwa and 8 other Mossab leaders, known as the Ogoni 9, were executed by hanging by the Abacha regime in Port Harcourt, Rivers State. He was the last to be hanged and so was forced to watch the death of his colleagues. It is widely believed that it took 5 attempts by the executioners to hang Saro-Wiwa before he spoke his last words, "Lord, take my soul." But the struggle continues and succumbed to death, dangling from a rope. He was 54. The execution of Ogoni 9 provoked international outrage from the United Nations and the world leaders, and immediate suspension of Nigeria from the Commonwealth of Nations. Arms embargo was imposed on Nigeria by the European Union and the United States. In 2009, Shell paid $15.5 million in an out-of-court settlement intended to resolve a lawsuit brought against it in 1996 on behalf of members of Saro-Wiwa's family and others. Shell, accused in the lawsuit of being complicit in human rights abuses in Nigeria and its 1995 executions, denied any wrongdoing. Also, the federal government, through the Hydrocarbon Pollution Remediation Project, approved the comprehensive cleanup of Ogoni land. Despite the approval of $95.9 billion for execution, the project is moving at snail speed, no thanks to several litigations by different groups in Ogoni land over the years. In his memory, the government of Rivers State renamed the state polytechnic to Kenule Bisen Saro-Wiwa Polytechnic, while a street in Amsterdam, the Netherlands, was named the Ken Saro-Wiwa Street. Saro-Wiwa also received the Right Livelihood Award in 1994 for his courage, as well as the Goldman Environmental Prize in 1995. It is sad to note that 27 years after the death of Saro-Wiwa, the people of Niger Delta region are still suffering the negative effects of oil exploration by multinational companies. Oil spillage and gas flaring have continued unabated to this day, with the people exposed to terminal diseases due to the contamination of the farmland, rivers, and airspace. Most oil-producing communities also live in abject poverty, while little or no access to social services such as quality health care, potable drinking water, schools, and road networks. The region has also become a hotbed for oil theft, oil bunkering, and illegal crude oil refining, with Nigeria losing over $2 billion to the menace between January to August 2022, according to a report by a Senate committee headed by Senator Akman Bassi. Despite being one of the leading oil producers in the world, with an average crude oil production of 1.6 million barrels per day as of December 2022, Nigerians still buy petroleum products at exorbitant rates, with scarcity of fuel the order of the day. The country's refineries are also comatose, while a few powerful individuals, together with some government collaborators, feed fat from the inadequacies in the sector. To the average citizen, Nigeria's crude oil deposits have been more than a curse and a blessing. The Ken Saro-Wiwa story will go down as one of the saddest tragedies in Nigeria's history. Please like, share, subscribe, and turn on the notification icon to get new video updates. Until next time, many thanks for watching.